Before we start tossing the salad today, we want to give you a quick heads up. Today's episode involves discussions of a murder-for-hire plot, intense psychological stalking, and family custody conflict. If you need to skip this one, we completely understand.
We're pulling today's episode straight from unsealed federal felony complaints, Los Angeles County court filings, and undercover FBI transcripts. We're looking at a case that just broke wide open with multiple arrests in May of 2026. You may have seen it in the headlines as TikToker murder for hire plot.
For a minute, imagine you are at the height of your career and one day there's a knock at your door. You open it and it's two federal agents standing on your porch. They aren't there to ask for an autograph. They're there to tell you that someone has put a hit out on your life. I mean, the feeling of not knowing who to trust next.
You would have trouble sleeping after hearing news like that. I mean, I wouldn't leave my house.
It would feel like you're being hunted.
Well, that's exactly what happened to pop singer Jack Avery. In 2025, Jack actually went on the Zach Sang show and talked about this terrifying moment. He said, and I quote, "Someone hired someone to kill me." He said he was so traumatized that he locked himself inside his house for a month straight and refused to leave, which sounds understandable.
And what makes this so much darker is that this wasn't some crazed, obsessed fan trying to track him down. According to prosecutors, the people who allegedly orchestrated this dark web hit were his ex-girlfriend, who is also the mother of his 7-year-old daughter, and her father, who is a civil trial attorney.
This is a wild, twisted story about how a bitter family court dispute crossed a line into a federal undercover sting operation, complete with cryptocurrency payments and a fake hitman. So, let's toss the salad.
Let's do it. I'm Ashley.
I'm Ricky.
And this is Crime Salad. To really understand how a situation escalates to a dark web murder plot, we have to start at the beginning of the relationship between Jack Avery and Gabriela Gonzalez, who goes by Gabby on social media.
Right. If you were plugged into the pop music or influencer scene back in 2018 or 2019, you definitely knew who these two were.
So Gabby was building her own massive following as a fashion and lifestyle influencer on TikTok and Instagram. She's originally from North Carolina, and she was young, beautiful, and building this huge platform. So when the two of them started dating around February of 2019, it was like a match made in social media heaven.
But their relationship moved incredibly fast. Just 5 months after they officially started dating, Gabby became pregnant, and in April of 2019, they welcomed their daughter into the world. Now, Jack was only 19 years old at the time, and Gabby was around 17.
Yeah, I mean, they were basically kids themselves. And you really have to think about the immense pressure that would put on a relationship. Navigating being a brand new parent is hard enough. I mean, it was incredibly overwhelming and challenging.
Oh yeah, I mean, 100%. It was a lot. I was going to school, working a job. I was still trying to figure out how to be a dad, and you were doing the same thing. You were a new mom, you were going to school. I mean, it's a lot to take on, and all at once, too.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you feel like you're drowning half the time just trying to figure out normal life stuff. But then imagine doing all of that while you're barely out of high school. Your partner is in a globally famous boy band, and millions of fans are dissecting your every move online. It's just a recipe for absolute stress.
Yeah, so we're definitely not judging the fact that it was hard for them. I mean, it's a massive challenge, even without the fame. And unfortunately, their relationship didn't survive that pressure. It was really tough. And then just a few months after their daughter was born in mid-2019, Jack and Gabby officially separated.
So before we get into the custody battle and all of that, let's talk about Jack Avery. He was in this boy band, as we mentioned, and it was actually pretty successful.
Why Don't We formed back in 2016, and they just completely exploded. I mean, to put it into perspective, we're talking over 3 billion global streams since they formed.
And the industry heavily backed them. Ed Sheeran actually wrote one of their biggest early hits, Trust Fund Baby, and they were selling out cross-country tours, performing on Good Morning America and playing in Madison Square Garden alongside Taylor Swift.
Exactly. I mean, their debut album went straight to the top 10 of the Billboard 200, and their follow-up hit number 3. So Jack was right in the middle of this massive pop machine. He goes from just being this kid from Pennsylvania, posting covers on YouTube, to literally living in this bubble of international superstardom. So when he and Gabby got together in early 2019, their entire lives were just moving at a million miles per hour.
And when the band eventually went on hiatus around 2022, Jack actually had to pivot to a solo career. And just recently, he's been putting out some solo music. He released a song called Please Don't Go in 2025 and some new ones this year. And he's been back on stage in New York.
Yeah, which makes this entire timeline so insane. Because while he was navigating the end of a boy band, launching a solo career, and fighting in family court, Gabby and her dad were quietly on the dark web plotting to end his life.
So when Jack and Gabby broke up in the summer of 2019, things didn't stay quiet for long. They were very quickly locked into a high-conflict custody dispute over their young daughter. And custody battles, as we know, can be extremely stressful. But this one became practically obsessive.
And according to witnesses who spoke with investigators, this wasn't just a dispute between Jack and Gabby. Gabby's entire family became deeply entangled in the conflict. One witness described the Gonzalez family as being completely obsessed with having full custody.
Which brings us to the man who a lot of people believe escalated everything, Gabby's father, Francisco Gonzalez. Francisco is a 59-year-old civil trial attorney based in Seminole County, Florida. He had his own law firm and specialized in major cases like wrongful death and medical malpractice.
Right, so we're talking about a man who is incredibly wealthy, highly educated, and makes his living fighting aggressively in court. He's a fixer. He's someone who is used to using his resources and power to completely bury the opposition. And when it came to his daughter's custody battle, he treated Jack Avery like the opposition.
Yes, and prosecutors lay out exactly how far Francisco was willing to go. According to the unsealed court documents, Francisco Gonzalez didn't just hire lawyers to fight Jack in family court. He hired private investigators.
The affidavits show that Francisco was paying a private investigator to actively stalk and track Jack Avery. They specifically wanted to dig up any dirt or catch any behaviors that they could use to destroy Jack in a custody dispute. He even threatened to have Jack arrested and allegedly tried to use his own contacts in law enforcement against him.
It's just so wild to think about. You have a Florida attorney pouring his own money into a smear campaign against a young pop star in California. The detectives on the case literally stated in their affidavit that Francisco had a sustained personal involvement in a campaign to gather information against Avery and use outside actors against him.
The hostility was off the charts, but the real turning point, the moment where this stopped being a dirty custody battle and crossed the line into a felony conspiracy, came down to something Francisco allegedly said out loud.
According to a witness who was interviewed by investigators, Francisco Gonzalez was discussing the massive legal bills and the endless fighting over custody, and the witness claims Francisco bluntly stated that it would all be cheaper if Avery were dead.
Which is a shocking and chilling thing for a lawyer to say, because shortly after that alleged statement, the Gonzalez family stopped looking for dirt to use in court, and they started looking for someone to carry out a hit.
So we know Francisco Gonzalez allegedly said it would be cheaper if Jack Avery were dead, but saying something terrible out loud and actually executing a murder-for-hire plot are two very different things. And to bridge the gap, they needed a middleman.
And that's where Gabby's new boyfriend at the time comes into the picture. His name is Kai Cordry. In early 2021, prosecutors say Gabby started feeding Kai all the details about the custody battle and her grievances with Jack. And the very first thing they tried wasn't actually the dark web.
Right, so she has this new boyfriend, and the first thing they tried was local intimidation. To set the scene here, Jack was actually spending some time in Kauai, Hawaii, around March of 2021, and Gabby's new boyfriend Kai happened to be a Hawaii-based surf instructor. So since they had that local connection, court documents allege that Gabby and Kai reached out to a former MMA fighter and boxing trainer on the island named Dustin Barsa. They apparently wanted to use him to physically intimidate Jack, basically to scare him or pressure him into packing up and leaving Kauai completely.
But Dustin wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. He refused to participate, didn't do anything illegal, and has not been charged with any crime. But this is a crucial moment, because when local intimidation didn't work out, that's when Gabby and Kai allegedly escalated the plot to the dark web.
Yes. So according to the felony complaint, they started discussing using the dark web to hire a hitman. And they eventually specifically talked about using Bitcoin as payment and trying to make Jack's murder look like a complete accident.
This is where the paper trail really starts to lock them in. Because hiring a hitman on the dark web isn't cheap, and Kai needed funding. That's where Francisco Gonzalez steps back in. On April 26, 2021, Francisco allegedly wired $10,000 to Kai to use as the front money for the hit.
And it didn't stop there. Once Kai took that money and went onto a dark web murder-for-hire site, the site's administrator told him that an expert hitman was going to cost more. They needed another $4,000 to get the job done.
Now, Francisco Gonzalez is a lawyer. He knows that transferring large sums of money during an active conspiracy leaves a massive footprint. So they allegedly tried to disguise the second payment. Kai actually owned a business called Site Whisperer. On June 5th, he sent Francisco an official business invoice for $4,000, framing it as a payment for web development services.
Francisco paid the $4,000 invoice, bringing the total amount funded for the hit to $14,000.
With the money secured, Kai allegedly went back online and put the official request for the hit to be carried out within a couple of days. They thought they had successfully hired a dark web assassin. But what they didn't know was that the person on the other end of the screen wasn't a hitman at all.
So a lot of people think the dark web is this incredibly sophisticated, foolproof underworld.
Yeah, it really isn't. When Kai Cordry logged on to find an assassin, he likely stumbled into what cybersecurity experts and the FBI know to be a massive ecosystem of scams and honeypots. But here's the secret of the dark web. Almost none of these sites are run by actual contract killers. The vast majority of them are run by overseas scammers who simply take your Bitcoin and completely disappear. Because who are you going to complain to? It's not like you can go to the police and say, hey, I paid a hitman and he didn't do the job.
And the scammers know that. In fact, the way the site administrator treated Kai and Francisco is a classic scam tactic. First, they ask for the $10,000 up front. Then, once you're on the hook, they suddenly claim that you need an expert hitman to milk you for another $4,000.
But the other half of these dark web murder sites aren't run by scammers. They're actually honeypots run by international law enforcement and the FBI. The FBI actively monitors these sites, and sometimes the scammers themselves actually tip off law enforcement when they get a real funded request, just to avoid being accessories to an actual murder.
Which is exactly the trap Kai and Francisco walked right into. They thought they were dealing with the administrator of a shadowy assassin network. But the moment that $14,000 cleared and the specific target was named, they were handed right over to federal agents.
I mean, it really highlights the sheer arrogance of Francisco Gonzalez. He's a 59-year-old, highly educated civil trial attorney. He knows how the law works. But he was so blinded by his obsession with winning this custody battle that he threw $14,000 at a completely unverified internet stranger, assuming his money and power made him untouchable. As we said, law enforcement agencies are constantly monitoring these sites. And in this case, the hitman that Kai thought he was communicating with wasn't a contract killer at all.
This is where the investigation flips from just tracking digital paper trails into a full-blown undercover sting operation. The FBI is now actively involved, and they have an undercover agent posing as the hitman, communicating directly with the conspirators.
And the details of these communications are chilling. According to the unsealed affidavits, the undercover agent didn't just communicate online. There were actual phone calls. In the fall of 2021, Kai got on the phone and spoke directly with the undercover agent posing as the killer.
During those recorded calls, Kai allegedly tells the undercover officer directly that Gabby wants the murder to happen. And he explicitly implicates her father, Francisco, as the one bankrolling the entire expense. But Kai wasn't the only one who made contact.
Exactly, and this is where the story sounds like something straight out of a movie. In December of 2021, prosecutors allege Francisco Gonzalez also reached out to the undercover federal agent. According to the felony complaint, Francisco sent a text message to the agent using the alias Fran G. It's unique, right? And a secret code word, Bull Run.
So the wealthy 59-year-old Florida trial attorney who has been trying to disguise his payments as web development is literally texting the word Bull Run to authorize a dark web hit. That's crazy.
Yeah, after sending that code word, Francisco actually got on the phone with an undercover agent. Authorities say that he used the call to discuss verifying the target and making sure the job was complete before final payments were settled.
And the most recent updates on this case reveal exactly what they wanted as proof. They didn't just want a photo to confirm the hit was done. According to prosecutors, they allegedly asked the hitman to bring them Jack Avery's pinky finger.
I don't know, to me this feels like something out of a mob movie or something. It's just absolutely deranged. And according to court documents, they used coded communications to try to cover their tracks. But the intent was undeniable. They were actively negotiating the brutal end of Jack Avery's life.
And so, while Kai, Gabby, and Francisco thought that they were just waiting for confirmation that the car accident had taken place, the FBI was already mobilizing. Because once law enforcement confirms there is an active, funded threat against someone's life, their first priority is to secure the target and to protect Jack at all costs.
Which basically meant that someone had to go tell Jack Avery that the mother of his child and her family had just paid a hitman to kill him. And the whole pinky finger thing, it just makes the sting operation that much darker.
Yeah, it's really dark, and it shows what type of people these people actually are. Gabby, she presents herself on TikTok as this wholesome, authentic person who is very vegan and organic and living this lifestyle that everybody wants. And it's just really interesting how different this side is. Once the FBI realizes that someone has actively paid $14,000 to have Jack Avery murdered, they don't just wait around to see what happens next. Their absolute first priority is the safety of the target, which means they had to make a visit to Jack's house.
Right, and Jack actually talked about this exact moment in an interview on the Zach Sang show last year, way before any of these arrests were made public. Now, keep in mind, this murder for hire business, it went down in 2021. This interview, it happened in 2025. This is years later. And the arrest didn't happen until May of 2026. We now know that he had to keep himself from saying who actually wanted him dead to the media. In this interview, he basically just says there was a knock on the door and he opens it, and two FBI agents are standing there on the porch just looking at him. And they say, "We're the FBI. Are you Jack?" And that's when they drop this absolute bombshell on him. They tell him that they've intercepted communications and that someone has paid a hitman to end his life.
Which would also be so surreal. He said he was completely traumatized, and rightfully so. He didn't know all the details at that exact moment, and he didn't know who ordered the hit or when it was supposed to happen. He just knew that someone was out there and they wanted him dead.
Jack said that after the FBI left, the paranoia completely took over. He literally locked himself in his house for a month straight and refused to leave. He said he was so scared that he would just sit there and look outside his window every single night, just terrified that someone was coming for him. Now, it's not exactly clear when he found out who actually wanted him dead, but the FBI did tell him at some point. And you really have to think about the psychological torture that he went through with that information, and for so long, too.
Yeah, because he was actively co-parenting with Gabby. He's sharing custody of their daughter with the very woman who prosecutors say orchestrated his murder. He's handing his child off to her, having conversations about parenting, all while living in this absolute nightmare. I mean, at first, it would be so hard to believe that the mother of your child and her father paid this amount of money to have you killed. But based on Jack's recent statements, he knew about the plot for years, and he had to stay quiet. He had to stay completely silent for the investigation. I mean, imagine looking at her in the face, pretending everything is totally normal so you don't tip her off, all while secretly knowing she tried to end your life.
And you could really see how strong-minded he is if you go back and listen to this interview on the Zach Sang show. And you know for a fact that eyes were on this interview. The FBI is watching. Gabby is definitely watching. And her dad's watching too. They're all just sitting there wondering if he's going to slip up and say who he believed the hit came from. But Jack doesn't crack. He navigates it perfectly without blowing the investigation.
Exactly. And if you listen closely to what he does say, it is chilling. When Zach asks him why he thinks someone would want him dead, Jack literally says, to get stress out of their life. He goes on to say that it hurts because he's a welcoming person and he doesn't understand why someone would want to try to kill him just for their own benefit. He is literally describing Gabby and Francisco's exact motive right to the mic without legally naming them.
Yeah, and what makes it even crazier is what he was dealing with from the public during all of this. In that same interview, Jack tells about how during this exact time with the FBI, people on social media were constantly commenting that he was a terrible dad and he didn't want to see his daughter. When in reality, Gabby's family was withholding their daughter in Hawaii, and he was terrified to even fly on a plane to go see her because he thought a hitman could be sitting right behind him. I mean, there's even a part in the interview where he talks about going to Hawaii, knocking on the door, and they basically just don't let him see his daughter.
He's taking all this public hate, knowing the real truth, but he can't defend himself because of the investigation. And he walked such a dangerous tightrope because while talking about the custody battle, he completely pivots and publicly praises Gabby. He literally says, "I'm not trying to put shame on Gabriella. She's a great mom. I won't lie. She's an incredible mom."
Which is just wild to watch in hindsight. He had to sit there on a massive podcast and praise the woman who tried to end his life. I mean, he was clearly advised by the FBI not to say or do anything publicly that would let them know that the feds were watching. It just shows how much psychological weight he was carrying behind closed doors. But Jack wasn't the only one living in fear during this time. While the FBI was quietly building their case, Gabby and Kai were actually panicking on their end too.
And it makes you wonder if they were starting to realize that they were dealing with an undercover agent.
I mean, they might not have known it was the FBI specifically, but they definitely knew the walls were closing in. According to the unsealed court documents, the FBI intercepted a recorded phone call between Gabby and Kai on October 20th, 2022.
So this is well over a year after they initially paid the fake hitman.
Exactly. During this 2022 call, Gabby and Kai were actively discussing the hitman's communications and trying to figure out how to handle the threat of exposure. They realized that they had left a massive digital footprint and were scrambling to do damage control.
It's so wild. And it shows that for years before they were finally arrested, they were looking over their shoulders, living with the constant anxiety that they were going to get caught.
But the FBI wasn't rushing. They were taking their time, connecting all of the dots, tracing the crypto payments, and confirming the coded calls. And that long waiting game finally came to a head in May of 2026.
Now, it took a few years of quiet, meticulous investigating by the FBI to trace all the cryptocurrency, decode the conversations, and build an airtight case.
And when law enforcement finally moved in, they didn't just arrest one person. They executed a coordinated takedown of an entire alleged conspiracy in a matter of days.
Gabby Gonzalez was actually arrested in Humboldt County, California on May 18th. And according to reports, she was taken into custody right as she was trying to board a flight. She was then transferred down to the Los Angeles County Jail where she made her first court appearance. She was wearing a blue hoodie, and her family was watching from the gallery.
Then the next day, Tuesday, May 19th, all the way across the country in Florida, authorities moved in on her father. Francisco Gonzalez was arrested in Seminole County by local authorities on a warrant out of California. He was booked and is currently being held without bail as he awaits extradition back to Los Angeles to face the music. So he is technically classified as an out-of-state fugitive right now. And they didn't stop there. On Thursday, May 21st, authorities officially arrested the third person in this alleged conspiracy. Kai Cordry was taken into custody in Los Angeles County. His bail was set at a massive $2 million.
And the charges they are facing are absolutely massive. Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan Hochman officially announced the charges, and he didn't mince any words. He said, and I quote, "Most fathers raise their children to respect the law, but here we have a dad who allegedly helped his daughter and her boyfriend break the law in the most sinister way imaginable," unquote.
The DA's office charged Gabby Gonzalez, Francisco Gonzalez, and Kai Cordry with 3 heavy felony counts each: attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder.
And just to show how seriously the judge is taking this, Gabby's bail was set at a staggering $2 million. This isn't a situation where you just post a quick bond and go home. If they are convicted on all 3 charges, every single one of them, Gabby, her father, and Kai, they're facing 25 years to life in a California state prison.
You really have to take a step back and look at the sheer destruction here. You have a wealthy, established attorney and a young influencer with her whole life ahead of her, potentially throwing it all away and facing life behind bars because they allegedly couldn't handle co-parenting.
And while the criminal justice system is now handling the charges, the immediate fallout hit the family hard because the second those arrests were made public, Jack Avery had to take extreme legal action to protect himself and his daughter. So after the arrests finally go down in May of 2026, the entire situation immediately spills over into family court because Jack Avery is now dealing with the horrifying reality that his daughter's mother and grandfather are facing federal conspiracy charges to trying to end his life.
Right. Jack didn't waste a single second. The very same day Gabby was arraigned in Los Angeles, Jack's legal team rushed to family court to file for an emergency action. He immediately filed for a temporary restraining order against Gabby, as well as a request for sole legal and physical custody of their 7-year-old daughter.
And the judge did not hesitate. The temporary restraining order was granted right away. Under that order, Gabby Gonzalez is legally barred from having any contact with Jack. She's not allowed to go within 100 yards of him. And crucially, she is not allowed to have any contact with their daughter while these criminal proceedings are playing out.
Which is a complete contrast of what the Gonzalez family wanted. I mean, they allegedly spent years obsessively fighting for full custody of the child, and their own alleged actions resulted in them losing all access to her completely.
Yeah, it's the absolute ultimate backfire. They wanted 100% control, and in trying to permanently erase Jack from the picture, they completely erased themselves from this child's life instead. You literally handed him sole custody on a silver platter because you couldn't just co-parent. I mean, it's tragic, but talk about karma.
Yeah, to think that they went to the absolute most extreme lengths possible, trying to hire a hitman on the dark web, just because they were frustrated with the family court process. Court documents even say witnesses described the family as being obsessed with having full custody. Then you have Francisco allegedly claiming it would just be cheaper if Avery were dead. And now the three of them are sitting in jail cells facing 25 years to life, while Jack Avery was officially granted full custody of their daughter just last week. You literally couldn't write a more poetic ending to that custody battle if you tried. And to top it all off, she met the financial requirements to post a $2 million bail and is now out with a GPS monitor. Just a few days later, photos surfaced showing Gabby walking out of the Los Angeles County Jail in camouflage clothing after posting the $2 million bail. Because she's considered a massive flight risk, the judge ordered her to surrender her passport and wear a GPS monitor. But other than that, she's able to sit out for 2 months.
But she is heavily restricted. She is stuck in California. Her movements are being tracked, and she has been ordered by the judge not to post anything about the case on social media. And she was scheduled to enter a plea at her arraignment this week, but her legal team actually waived her plea until next court date on July 23rd.
So basically, she has 2 months until it gets real. And as far as Jack Avery, he actually broke his silence publicly on Instagram just a few days ago, right after the arrests were announced. He posted a really lengthy, heartfelt message to his 1.4 million followers.
He did. And what really stood out was that he talked about how he had to stay completely silent for years out of respect for the legal process, which would be really hard. And he mentioned that he and his family have endured intense public scrutiny, false accusations, and painful attacks on their character, all while he secretly knew about this murder plot.
He thanked his family, friends, and the Los Angeles County DA's office for their hard work. But the most important part of his message was about his daughter. He confirmed that he now has sole custody of her, and adding that she's safe, healthy, and deeply loved. He ended the whole post with 4 words: always seek the truth.
And as for Gabby, not to give her any attention, but her TikTok, she has 2 TikToks that I noticed. One account has 415.5 thousand followers, and her newest account only has around 9,700 followers. But what I found interesting is when you're looking at her videos, some of these were posted in 2025, like one of her most recent ones. And you can see her, and it's like this whole time that she's posting these videos, just living her life, there is a massive federal investigation quietly closing in on her. And that's the part that I feel is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it really just adds another eerie layer to this whole situation.
It's all just so hard to wrap your head around a case like this. I mean, you have a Florida trial attorney, a man who spent his life studying and practicing the law, who was allegedly willing to throw away his career, his freedom, and his daughter's freedom, all over a custody dispute.
It really just shows you that no matter how much money or education someone has, it doesn't protect them from losing complete touch with reality. To go from fighting in family court to wiring $14,000 for a dark web hitman is just a horrifying escalation of control.
I don't know about you, but I am going to be keeping a very close eye on this case as it heads toward trial. And we'll try to update you on Patreon if anything happens. If you happen to see something, go ahead and post it. Let everyone know. Let's talk about this case. It's really interesting. And if you would like to take your own look at the unsealed affidavits and court documents, you can read the undercover transcripts for yourself. Everything will be in our show notes, so you'll get a link there directly.
And be sure to check out crimesaladpodcast.com to grab some of our new merch. If you want to listen ad-free, you can subscribe on Patreon or directly through Apple Podcasts.
And your support is the reason that we keep covering these stories. So thank you so much for helping us grow. Thank you for sharing Crime Salad with a friend. And if you're still listening, have a great rest of your day.